With that, I would like to introduce Ted Smith from WSP. Ted Smith is the Senior Vice President, Transportation Operation. He will be talking about the challenges with current method and tool to estimate staffing needs. With that, I'll turn it over to Ted, and welcome, Ted.
Great. Thank you, Judith. If I could get you to advance to the first slide, please. All right. As we dug into this research, it became clear that transportation agencies face several challenges in determining their TMS staffing needs. These challenges include, but are not limited to, quantifying needed skills for TMSs, understanding the metrics and data needed to estimate staffing, hiring or developing staff with specific expertise, training staff in specific technical issues, modifying staff roles and job descriptions, supporting TMSs with a range of needed skills and resources, predicting or estimating future staffing needs, and understanding evolving TMS functions and services. So these were some of the issues that we started to address with this research. If you could advance the slide, please. Okay. By definition, a TMS is comprised of various technologies, software, systems, processes, and human resources that manage the roadway and respond to events impacting the performance of the transportation network. Estimating staffing needs to support TMS functions is part of an agency process that entails 6 discrete steps that we're going to talk about today. Step 1, assessing, preparing, and engaging operational stakeholders. Step 2, determining KSAs and needed positions. Step 3, determining staffing needs. Step 4, developing staffing approach. Step 5, developing site management strategies, and the final step, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating staffing levels. Of these 6, it's important to note, of these 6, 1, 2, and 4 are critical in identifying staffing needs. If we could advance the next slide, please. The first step in estimating staffing needs is to assess, prepare, and engage. The purpose of this step is to prepare and plan for the TMS staffing and confirm the scope and performance objectives of the TMS operations. Some of the key actions an agency can conduct in this step include, but are not limited to, assessing needs for staff planning, engaging stakeholders, obtaining approvals, assigning resources, aligning with other strategic planning or human resource initiatives or efforts, confirming TMS scope, performance objectives and goals, identifying TMS functions, services, actions, and determining factors affecting current and future staffing levels. We can go to the next slide, please. As an agency begins to estimate their staffing needs, they may run into a range of challenges. Some of the challenges that we've identified through this research include, but are not necessarily limited to, identifying and collecting the correct data to support analytical activities, determining a methodology to use when estimating staffing needs, identifying and selecting appropriate performance measures for the staffing levels. And there are a lot of different things that are included in that, including staff performance, understanding the metrics and data needed to estimate staffing levels, predicting future staffing needs, and developing the capability to monitor and collect staff performance data and TMS demands. If we could go to the next slide. I apologize. I've got a little bit of a cold today, so a little bit scratchy and a little bit stuffed up. I showed you previously the process, the overall process, and we're going to focus in on this slide with steps 2 and 3, which are really focused on helping an agency identify TMS staffing needs. Step 2 involves determining KSAs and positions needed for TMS functions, action, services, and support. Examples of the key actions in step 2 are determining current and future KSA needs, implement and operate, required to implement and operate the TMS, matching TMS functions, actions, and services and support to the job classification, drafting or updating needed positions and descriptions, and defining staff performance measures that align with the TMS operational performance measures. Step 3 involves determining the TMS operations, schedule, demand, and number of positions for current and future needs. Examples of key actions in Step 3 are collecting data on to help determine staffing demands and performance, forecasting future demand and staffing needs, and calculating staffing needs, determining TMS operating and staffing schedules, revising positions based on levels of KSA needed, and assessing current and expected resources versus demand and future needs. If we can move forward to the next slide. Different methods might be needed for assessing needs for specific positions serving a particular TMS. Agencies should consider whether staffing needs should be assessed for the entire TMS or for specific function services or activities. Positions within the TMC should be similar within the context of function services and actions that are supported by the TMS. Regardless of the estimation approach or strategy adopted, agencies should consider incorporating position descriptions, KSAs, level of required supervision or oversight of the operators, the influence of remote or distributive operations, which or have been key over the last couple of years, and some of the things that we've dealt with in TMCs nationally with things like the COVID pandemic. Also, the location support services such as weather information technologies and resources, whether they're provided on site or made available remotely. Once needed staff positions have been identified, agencies can draft or update the needed positions and descriptions. Thank you for advancing. Um, Forecasting potential TMC staffing needs can be a complex undertaking. To that end, FHWA has developed an overall framework for analysis, a generic term for examining the job-related activities performed by an employee that might be leveraged by agencies, which is illustrated in this slide. This work analysis process encompasses job analysis, workload analysis, demand analysis, and tax allocation. Excuse me, tax allocation. Next slide, please. TMC job analysis methodologies are undertaken to determine the basic elements of work and assess the employee characteristics necessary to perform each element. A job analysis may be used to confirm that an employee possesses the necessary attributes to perform the duties of their positions. A job analysis can generally be oriented in two different ways. First is a task oriented, and second is a worker oriented. Next slide, please. Staffing level requirements are dependent on the service provided, task performed, number of shifts, anticipated support from other systems and subsystems, and service providers. This slide provides kind of a summary of basic functions and skills associated with the primary program areas associated with the TMC operations. It's really important to understand with this slide, though, that this is not comprehensive and obviously will vary by each individual TMC nationally. Uh, as we've been taught, the functionality of TMCs may vary significantly within a given state. It's also important to note that functions and associated skills are likely to evolve over time, particularly with increasing automation. That's something that I'm personally dealing with right now with some of the TMCs that we actually operate with automatic incident detection coming online, some additional functionality like ICM capabilities. Next slide, please. By analyzing workload relative to human performance, agencies can identify and design the work system in terms of task and equipment such that employee performance is optimized. Three factors are often considered in analyzing the workload, the TMC workload, the employee workload, and the attention. TMC workload assesses the overall agency workload necessary for predicting scheduling requirements. Is commonly measured in terms number of centerline miles, the number of intersections, the number of miles or routes included in the region, the number of incidents and incident severity, the number of vehicles in operation, the number of vehicle miles traveled per day. Employee workload, measuring this can vary based upon a number of factors, including the combination of task performed, the difficulty of the task, and the individual characteristics of the employee. Attention, TMC operators are concerned primarily with monitoring transportation infrastructure, a task that requires attention of human observers. The attention required for a particular task is therefore is of critical importance in accessing the workload requirements. Next slide, please. Various demand prediction models have been used to determine employee scheduling requirements based on demand or TMC services. Agencies may use time series data recorded over equally spaced intervals and ordered by occurrence to support this analysis. This will likely include four components: trend component, seasonal component, uh, cyclical component, and our random component. Next slide, please. Let's talk for a minute about a few examples of agencies that estimate TMC staffing without any formal tools. Minnesota DOT has adopted sector, sector staffing model for its centers. Because it is a public sector agency, staffing decisions are highly contingent on availability of funding, which is very common in most states. New staff positions are created only when there is impending retirement or existing personnel must be transferred to a different division within the TMC. TMC staff uh, have also indicated they do not, in the MnDOT TMC indicated they do not have any formal process or tools for estimating these needs. Utah DOT conducted a benefit cost analysis based on congestion incident clearance, considering factors such as urban versus rural, number of incidents within the corridor. Based on this analysis, agency executive approved additional staff for incident management for the incident management team and a permanent staff for the TMC to support a range of TSMO initiatives. Um, in Pennsylvania, the current framework for assessing staffing needs is ad hoc, with the DOT working towards a formalized process. As an example, during major winter events, staffing is adjusted on the fly to address events as warranted by PennDOT. Um, PennDOT is planning on starting with a snapshot or current requirements and projecting those into the future, but does not have a formalized process yet. Next slide, please. Task allocation methodologies assign discrete work activities to employees based on the results of job and work load analysis. Task allocation activities thus ensure the optimum allocation of work among employees in different scheduling configurations. The results from a job analysis and workload analysis help determine and assign work to employees or groups of employees. Next slide, please. Step 4, developing staffing approach, and step 5, developing staff management strategies will lead to the development or critical in developing the TMS staffing plan. We're going to talk a little bit more though about both those tasks in the next slide. Next slide, please. Step 4 involves developing a TMS staffing plan and staffing approach. The key actions for estimating staffing needs are finalizing job roles and classifications and determining whether to self-perform in-house or outsource operations. Um, Although not directly involved in estimating staffing needs in the current estimation process, step 5 can contribute to the staffing estimation by first developing strategies for building staff capacity and recruitment to improve um, or reduce the need to hire more skilled staff in the next staff estimation process. Further, implementing staff retention approaches helps to reduce in hiring is in the next estimation process. And finally, establishing performance management goals for performance development to support staff capacity and improve retention. Next slide. The last step in the process to estimate staffing needs is implementing, monitoring, and evaluating. The purpose of this step is to assess current and needed capabilities, monitor performance, and adjust as needed. Some of the key activities include developing and implementing comprehensive performance monitoring approach, implementing reporting mechanisms, regularly assessing capabilities against needs, identifying planning for enhancements, updating staffing plans based on evaluations, and incorporating monitoring the results into day-to-day management. Uh, the, re- the results of this task can be used to improve the staffing estimation process. We can move down one more slide. Some of the key lessons learned during this research include the following. TMC managers are often unable to properly utilize formal tools um, and rely upon an ad hoc non-technical process for estimating staffing needs. Staffing decisions are often made when funding becomes available. Cost-benefit analysis are commonly used to justify new staff positions when funding might be requested. Staffing plans can be developed for each component of the TMS and help make the business case for additional resources, and changes in TMS demand can also be used as a factor in determining staffing. I think I mentioned, moving forward, a lot of TMCs like the ones that we operate end up with additional functionality like with AID and ICM coming online. And I think that's the end of my presentation.